Hello, everybody. Hello, the internet. Welcome back to Fireside Friday, a show that, until this episode, has pretty much exclusively been dedicated to giving you fake financial advice. We're now taking the very real step into giving you somewhat fact-driven financial. Is it advice or is it information? Who knows? Anyway, today's episode is going to be about D.A.F.s. You know what a D.A.F. is? Do you know what a D.A.F. is? If you don't know what a D.A.F. is, you should stick around. You should find out because this stuff could be really dangerous, folks. So hit that theme song.
Presenting your host, Cuddy Five.
Thank you for the theme song. Great theme song. Thank you again. Odd but fair. I'm gonna keep giving you that shout out until the day I die. So, what are D.A.F.s? What are D.A.F.s? I hear you on the other side of the screen asking me a really legitimate question, and that really legitimate question is, what are D.A.F.s? I didn't know what D.A.F.s were until about 2 days ago, and now I know a little bit about what D.A.F.s are. So let's start with it. D.A.F.s. D.A.F.s. Those are donor-advised funds. So donor-advised funds are a piece of modern-day financial technology that I now know a little bit about. And what I've figured out may shock you. As the assets held by the American economy continue to increase by billions of dollars every year, D.A.F.s continue to make up an increasingly large share of charitable contributions. In 2023, the official D.A.F. report said that D.A.F.s took in a staggering 41% of contributions. So in the fiscal year of 2023, the D.A.F.s took in just under about half of all charitable contributions in America. In some cases, these D.A.F.s aren't even really required to pay out. A payout for a D.A.F. is how much money, how much value is given out versus how much the account has at its disposal. In the year 2023, it looks like the D.A.F.s paid out $65.29 billion in contributions. This is pretty substantial, but it's also worth noting that the total amount of assets actually held by D.A.F.s are much greater. In 2024, the total amount of assets held by D.A.F.s was apparently $326.45 billion. For those unfamiliar, this is a massive bag, and despite how awesome it is to think about swimming around in that big Scrooge McDuck vault, the consequences of dividing the tax system in this way and sending a huge portion of the assets managed by America into these D.A.F.s could potentially be very disastrous for the economic realities of everyday Americans. D.A.F. and charitable donations have been touted as a powerful philanthropic tool, yet it could be responsible for warehousing contributions, which ultimately limits spending on more effective nonprofits, and they could be potentially costing American taxpayers over $100 billion a year due to the tax breaks that they can afford to the wealthiest of us. So that's our little introduction into D.A.F.s, but, you know, maybe you're still kind of unsure about what a D.A.F. is. So that was our small introduction to D.A.F.s, and here we're going to talk a little bit more about what D.A.F.s actually look like. So according to the U.S. Law Explained website, you can put money into these D.A.F.s whenever you like, get an immediate tax break for your deposit, and then over time you can tell charities, you can tell the bank which charities to send the money to. You can even invest the money in your D.A.F. so that it grows, allowing you to give more in the future. Once contributed to a DAF, the assets that you put in the DAF are then managed by a public charity called a sponsoring organization, 501c3 for those of you paying attention. And these sponsoring organizations can come in all shapes and sizes. The largest and most significant are national commercial providers. These tend to have low fees. They usually have user-friendly online platforms, high minimum investment, and less hands-on guidance, meaning that the people who contribute to DAFs like this likely have a little bit more control over where they're actually sending the money in those DAFs. And the people who are probably going to participate in this version, the national commercial providers, are likely people who are comfortable with online tools and who are more focused on tax efficiency and low cost. i.e., this is kind of the bottom of the barrel type tax break slop, right? If you just want to very quickly get a tax break for a charitable donation, you can give to, for example, Fidelity Charitable, Schwab Charitable. There are a whole bunch of financial firms who basically, as a result of DAF technology, have opened up nonprofit branches in order to kind of mass market these DAFs to the American public. The next kind of sponsoring organization are community foundations, which have deep local expertise. They're more personalized philanthropic funds, which might pool with other local funds for bigger impact. They generally have high fees, and those who support these normally want specific donors, and they want to help support specific geographical areas. These include Silicon Community Foundation and the Chicago Community Trust. There are single-issue charities for people who want to just donate to a specific cause. This the best way to represent this is probably with the National Christian Foundation, and then there are independent providers who, honestly, according to a bunch of these graphs, take up so little of this space that we're not really going to even talk about them. So, what's the history? Just to make clear that you know what we're covering here, DAFs are accounts created by people in order to receive tax breaks. That is one of the main reasons that this has become incentivized behavior for people with substantial amounts of wealth, is the amount of tax breaks you can receive by giving to a DAF. By giving to charitable causes. The money is held by sponsor organizations like Fidelity Charitable, who can advise the contributor on where to direct their contribution, but you can also use your DAF to invest and grow your portfolio and potential contributions. So, in other words, you essentially let a 501c3 hold on to your money to receive a tax break, while they allow you to maintain basically complete control over where it goes in the case of especially somewhere like a Fidelity. And this means that the people who can donate substantial amounts can use these contributions to reduce the amount of taxes that they have to pay, including capital gains tax, because you can actually use DAFs to sort of donate more complex, stock options or capital gains or anything like that. And while they are able to both reduce their taxes by contributing like this, they're also able to sort of manage these assets in these DFA accounts. And this all started back in New York in the 1930s with community funds like the New York Community Trust. The goal of these organizations earlier was to supposedly make it easier for local citizens to support community needs without establishing a private foundation, which is another sort of situation where the minimum payout required for a private foundation year on year is 5%. The D.A.F.s differ because there are no minimum payouts required. So they've been around since the 1930s, but weren't really popular until the 1990s, when Fidelity sort of opened up their 501c3 and made this available to a mass audience. Right, And then finally, the sort of like last piece in the legal framework that comes to define these DAFs was actually established in the Pension Protection Act of 2026. And this is significant, and we just want to go over this really quickly in our introduction video. Pension Protection Act of 2026 defines a DAF as an encounter fund that is separately identified by reference to contribution of donor or donors, which is controlled by a sponsoring organization, and which, with respect to the donor, has or can reasonably expect to have advisory privileges in respect to the distribution or investments. It's also worth noting that a bunch of these DAFs have successor plans, which means that if, for example, the person who opened up the DAF ends up passing, they can actually directly hand the DAF fund down to their next of kin or down to any other potential advisor they might want to recommend. So the interests who open these accounts are also able to control them hypothetically for an extended period of time. So now that we kind of know what DAFs are, what are the consequences here? And there are two ways of looking at the consequences of DAFs. The first way is the more charitable way of looking at them. A lot of people who, especially in the research, who look at DAFs see them as a motivator for charitable giving. To these people, DAFs promote those with vast sums of wealth. They encourage them to donate by offering them tax breaks. And then even more so by routing these charitable investments into funds that can grow. That essentially will be very helpful for establishing long-term giving strategies. Currently, the total amount of accumulated assets in DAFs are over $300 billion, and this ends up representing money that can both grow and continue to provide funds for charities long into the future. So that's kind of the most optimistic way of seeing these DAFs, and that's how a lot of people are gonna kind of frame this conversation. But a lot of that sort of support for DAFs end up sort of like missing a number of key aspects to this picture, which kind of get more addressed in our less hopeful way of looking at DAFs, which see DAFs as a sort of money warehouse. These funds both create an avenue that allows billionaires to dodge paying an appropriate share of taxes, and it also provides a space where their money and assets can continue to grow in value for generations to come. So according to the IPS, every dollar that's donated to a DAF by those in the top tax bracket is 70 more cents that American taxpayers need to make up for. Further, transparency laws over the past decades have majorly lagged behind the DAF framework laws. So when applied to DAF or DAFs, these transparency laws essentially mean that billions of dollars can basically be routed to other DAFs. So I can use a DAF to send another, privately advised charity. I can use my DAF to send that DAF a whole bunch of money, and that actually can be written off as a payout. So while there's, certainly a camp of people who advocate for DAFs and say that it's a great way to, first of all, motivate charity, and then an even better way for sort of making sure that we have long-term strategies for charitable giving, there is a considerable amount of people who can also argue that these are responsible for sort of like warehousing and hoarding a bunch of this so-called like money spent on charitable giving. And then obviously the other thing is that these billionaires then don't need to pay as much taxes, and they also only send money directly to sort of what concerns them in respect to charity, which means that the money on top of us having to pay potentially more money in taxes because of the way that these tax breaks work, it also means that the actual causes that are being funded are more likely going to be much more to the interest of the person who, for example, is investing in a DAF. So these issues could potentially represent hundreds of billions of dollars that the elite are using to defraud the tax-paying Americans of lower tax brackets. So, and it also comes at the cost of legitimate charities. Basically, how the payout works is these D.A.F.s, along with the sort of sponsoring organizations, talk to the advisors and get their information on what charities they want to give grants to, and it really then requires whoever's contributing here to choose one particular charity or another, which means that a bunch of funding for certain nonprofits may not happen if certain billionaires don't decide to give to particular nonprofits. So this is also costing nonprofit spaces in this sort of charity space a lot of money in ways that I don't think a lot of people understand. So, and this all happens while those who are kind of at the top of this whole system end up profiting off of these tax breaks that they're able to receive. So for the next couple weeks, we're going to really focus our attention on D.A.F.s, how they work, what inspired them, and how they affect everybody. And so this has just been merely an introduction to the topic, an introduction to both sides of the argument here, and an introduction to what D.A.F.s are and a little bit of how they work. So in the weeks to come, we're going to cover more aspects of these and hopefully get a little bit more in-depth and maybe find some solid conclusions and figure out what should be done about D.A.F.s. And for our next week, next Fireside Friday, we're going to be looking at the origins of the D.A.F. and specifically this New York Community Trust. So if you watched this episode of Fireside Friday and were interested by the D.A.F.s, that's great to know. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next week. This is a small addendum to the end of Fireside Friday. I know this is the day of the week I typically reserve to update anybody on what's going on with the channel, and so I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm gonna do that. And so first thing first, Fireside Friday, we are going to shift our focus a little bit. I know Fireside Friday was originally kind of dedicated to first sharing new things going on with the channel, and then the sort of secondary purpose was to give fake business advice after the updates were given. I'm gonna flip it, so we're actually gonna go over the advice first, and I'm trying to bring in more legitimate pieces of information to the broadcast. So obviously this week we're going over D.A.F.s, and I kind of intend on making D.A.F.s the subject of a little mini-series going forward. So if you want to keep up with that work, then that'll be Fireside Fridays. And this is also something that we're going to have to broach, which is the production of how everything is working right now. I have a secondary job which just started, and that's how I get money. So that's going to take priority with my time, which means that recording is going to be a little bit more difficult. Researching is going to be a little bit more difficult. There are just basically a number of things that are taking up my time. And I kind of hope to continue to advance the quality of the product on this channel. So, videos are going to be filmed differently. I'm not filming all the videos in a 1 hour block like I originally kind of intended to, which means that, I'm going to have a little bit of a harder time necessarily doing quality control with scheduling. For those who are paying attention to the channel this week, our TV Report Tuesday came out a day late. That's because I was working on including graphics and working on just trying to get the episode to be a little bit better. And that's another thing for the time being. Our TV Report Tuesday is going to actually switch to focusing on just specific episodes of the X-Files and the mythology that surrounds them. So with all that being said, I think those are all the big kind of production updates and sort of focus updates. Let's tell you all what's going on with the channel this week. So on Fridays, we're going over D.A.F.s. This Friday, obviously, was the initial introduction of D.A.F.s. Next Friday will be the origins and history of D.A.F.s. Saturday's Crash Out is, who knows what that's going to be about. I have a lot to be mad about, and I haven't really planned it out yet. I might be mentioning how people don't know how to use washers and dryers, according to PC Richard and Son, and I may be talking about our new Holy War, which has been launched by our Commander-in-Chief and Pete Hegsbreath. So that's Friday and Saturday. Sunday, I'm gonna hopefully get out a trailer for what we have a movie coming out on this channel, a short film, a short comedy crime film, shot, directed, and written by yours truly. We have a couple of my friends who are gonna be starring roles in it, and I'm very excited. Hopefully, we can get a trailer out on Saturday, just to get something up on Saturday. Medieval Monday is going to be about chaplainry. Who knows? I don't really. It's about chaplains, how the tradition started, and how it sort of was operating during the Battle of Bouvines, and how William of Breton interacts with the whole idea of chaplainry. TV Report Tuesday, we're going to be going over the Jersey Devil episode of the X-Files. Very fun. Why Wednesday, we're going to be going over why the dollar is green. Have you ever wondered that? Why all your cash money's green? That's interesting. It's an interesting thing, and I'm very excited to talk about it. And that leaves us with, last but not least, we have Two True Thursday coming up, which for the oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that for Two True Thursday. The one thing I have written down right here is Wuthering Heights. Don't watch it. Don't read it. Don't listen to the Kate Bush song. I'm kidding, by the way. The Kate Bush song is fantastic. So, but I don't think that's what it's going to be. So, Two True Thursday could also hypothetically be the fact that the world is a graveyard. I was thinking about that a little bit. How many people have died on this earth? Maybe that's what we do. Maybe on Two True Thursday we figure out how many people have died throughout human history, just to rub it in your face a little bit more. And that'll bring us to the end of the week. So if you watch this, if you watch the DAF part of the video, thanks for watching. You're a true friend, and I hope you're excited for the week to come and what we have planned. So thank you for watching.